Welcome to Transforming the Trades, the podcast where we empower you to take charge and innovate your business. Whether you're a plumber, electrician, or any other trade professional, this show is designed to give you the tools and strategies you need to succeed. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to take your business to the next level with Transforming the Trades. Hey, Warren, Lynn Wise, Transforming the Trades. Thanks for joining the podcast today. Let me just kind of lay out some of my thoughts as we proceed to introduce you and your company. Transforming the Trades was a concept and an idea that I had related to this industry specifically, where we have a habit of looking at what's been done in the past versus looking at what can be done in the future or what should be doing. And so it's really about innovation. It's about different business models. It's how we resource differently. It's technology. It's business systems. It's looking outside of our industry and looking at what others are doing and thinking about how does it apply to our industry? How do we implement those workflows and those frameworks in our business? So having you on today and considering what your company does, it's really exciting for me. So do me a favor, introduce yourself, tell us more about your company, what you do, and then we'll talk more about where we are and you're thinking about what's transforming, what you think you're doing to transform the trades.
Yeah, absolutely. Name is Warren Lentz. I'm the CEO and founder of Yellowstone Local. We work specifically with skilled trade businesses and helping them build top performing teams by really outsourcing that entire business system and function altogether, from employer branding, recruiting, hiring, technology process reporting, even into the orientating and onboarding and retention stages of staffing and building a great team.
So what made you decide to focus on a business or a service that would do this for a business in the trades?
So how I got to this point, very similar to you, or at least something that you mentioned, really piqued my interest because it's something I've said for a very long time, is looking outside the industry and how do those things apply to this industry where I feel like there's a big void. I always use the classic example of Slack. I talk to home service company owners every day. Nobody knows what Slack even is, just a basic example. And maybe not even the best one, but it's to say, okay, well, how do the enterprise level software and SaaS companies, the technology world, how do we go about recruiting and hiring, et cetera? And where's the gap there? And how I got into the industry to begin with is, from maybe 2016 on, really got into helping this industry and HVAC plumbing companies generate leads through local marketing. They definitely a core competency of mine, something I enjoy doing. But especially after COVID, looking at what I thought was glaringly the largest problem in the trades, recruiting, I had to kind of couldn't resist and had to try to solve the biggest one.
So you said an interesting phrase, employer branding. So tell me what you think that is and why that's important.
Yeah, actually, I think it's probably the most important. None of it works if you don't have all three. But I think it's the most important because fundamentally, I think employer branding is just being attractive to who you're trying to attract in its simplest form. And people really get caught up in allowing the assumptions or allowing them to overlook that aspect of it. And when you just simply ask, business owners or, my clients and people that we're working for, some very basic questions in terms of, well, why would this person want to work for you? Seems like a pretty intuitive question. It kind of begins that paradigm shift for them. Say, oh, I get it. I use the analogy oftentimes, do you think maybe Grant Cardone has any issues hiring great salespeople, or Alabama football team has any problem recruiting great quarterbacks to play for the football team, et cetera? Answer's probably no. And that's really a great example, two great examples of what employer branding can do.
Absolutely. So Warren, let's talk about this phrasing. I mentioned it earlier about employer branding. I believe that is a transformational thought in itself. Most employers, whether it's in this industry or otherwise, they're not thinking about employer branding. They're not thinking about themselves as the key person of influence, if you will, or the key company of influence. They're thinking more about driving sales. So I would love to hear about your vision around employer branding and what it actually will attribute to the transformation of the trades.
Yeah. Well, in relation to employer branding and why I feel like it's such a big part of what we do and part of the process and what is ultimately going to equal success for our clients is I actually started when we started at Yellowstone Local. I just thought I was going to start generating candidates. I was going to take it from a marketing approach and still do, but really kind of looked at, okay, I'll run some Indeed ads and we'll generate some candidates and maybe we'll give them an ATS or something along those lines. And when that started going, I kind of boiled it down to its first principles when we weren't getting good outcomes for our clients and really began to think about how intimately connected the reason why somebody stays with a company for 20 years, how that should be connected to exactly why somebody's even going to apply for a job that you're hiring for right now. Because those motivations are deeply connected, I feel. And it aligns those incentives to really shift the focus of, I don't want to hire people. Hiring people is very expensive. It's a
Yes.
huge liability, right?
Yes.
And so really hiring for retention, right? Or recruiting for retention, that's where the return on investment goes. And that's where you can actually provide much more value to the actual employee as well. And so that said, looking at it from that approach, I think so many people miss the mark on it. And I definitely have as well early on, because I think a lot of people are just short-term thinkers, right? They want the candidates now. It's already a reactive process. They weren't doing it proactively, but the same thing as marketing. If you don't have good branding, well, then you're going to end up spending more money on marketing with probably less conversions, less ROI over a longer period of time. Recruiting is no different. And actually, I think it makes the case to make even a bigger emphasis on it. And how that kind of plays out in real life, we do a variety of different things. But I think fundamentally it starts with the owner. What kind of culture do you have? Do you have mission statement? Do you have a vision for the business somebody's going to buy into? Core values, and not just are they written down on a piece of paper or you've kind of thought about them, but are they being lived out every day? And are you as the leader and as a company, right, really pushing that down not only to the employees, but especially the new employees? And are you leading with that in your recruiting and your hiring process? And so that way, when you actually do get the person to show up for the first day, they've kind of already bought in for the right reasons and know exactly what they're getting into. And I think from there, right, then it's making sure that that's consistent every part of the process. And also kind of making sure that, yeah, you may be a great company, do so many amazing things for your employees. And I think by and large, a lot of home service company owners, especially, really treat these people like family. I mean, I think the number one thing I see on a job description for a home service company is family owned, or we treat you like family. And so we just want to make sure that matches what a candidate's experience and impression is. So everything from career sites to full websites to branding kits, really understanding their audience in terms of candidate personas and getting to those aspects so they can begin to shift their mindset and approach it, I think, more so for the long game.
So are we as employers getting this wrong? We get on in a group where you go have coffee and you go, geez, these people, they just don't want to come to work. Is that the problem? Or is it the problem that we're not focusing on ourselves as employers and looking at this whole, are you creating the right place that people want to work? So what's your thoughts on that?
Kind of first thought is, man, the lies that we tell ourselves. And, what I mean by that is, yeah, nobody wants to work for you because either they don't know who you are or that you exist or why they should work for you. I mean, how much are you investing in making sure that you get, top performing or the right people in the door? home service, I think that people are the product by and large, especially. So I think it's even more important for them. But yeah, totally wrong. I think that's totally missing the mark. I think that's their impression. I think a lot of people's impressions, and hard to say that I wouldn't have that impression either for a lot of the experience they have. Yeah, is it like a diminishing data set, or we're experiencing some scarcity in the market? That's undoubtedly true, but most companies and almost every company could not employ the amount of quality people that are able to work in their total addressable market. And so until we've reached that, then we'll have the conversation about nobody wanting to work. But until we get to that point, let's talk about how we actually take advantage of the opportunity of, earning somebody's trust to come work for me as a business owner, and making sure I'm doing everything I have, more having an internal locus of control about it.
That's awesome. So are there any examples where you've seen success that you can share with us?
I think I could point to a couple, but I think one of the things that stands out when you ask that question is something I really don't tell a lot of people, but I honestly should. And it was something that was really surprising to me. And what that is when I look at, so we recruit and have over 600 open positions across the United States for over 200 different home service companies. And I'm always looking at data and trends on a macro level to understand what's more difficult. Should we be charging more? What gets better outcomes, et cetera. And it's not the type of position. It's not even the geographical area that we're recruiting in. It's not them paying more money. The number one most correlative thing that equals success or a successful outcome for our clients, is it a good business? Right. And I had a bit of a trouble actually connecting those dots, but when I just took a step back and looked at the businesses that were like, man, we're killing it for these companies, and these ones are struggling. And it's like, well, yeah, all of these companies over here, those are really like, James at Whistler Plumbing and Air. He's an amazing operator, an amazing business owner. Another one, Jeff Seal with Accurate Electric in California. Yeah, he's a really good business owner as well, and plenty others. But I think that would be the actual story. And example is the example of the data set of over 200 clients and over 600 open jobs, and looking at it from a scale of that size. And just, I was actually really surprised when I actually found that out.
And it resonated. So, I've been in the trades for a long time, and I've been through some interesting economic downturns and some really huge economic upturns. And what always seems to come to bear, and I've always felt, especially in the last 12 years, 15 years, that one of the impacts of all that is, are you a good business or are you a bad business? And during economic downturns, what happens is that bad businesses go out of business or operate in a worse way. And it gives a reputation of the industry. And then to go and attract candidates to come to this industry, it just makes it harder. So they got laid off, they got let go, their paycheck didn't draft right, all of those reasons. And so we've left ourselves with a reputation problem. And it all comes down to, were they a good business or were they a bad business? And the fact of the matter is that good businesses will always survive and be able to recruit and retain good candidates. That's very true. I think that's very true. I agree. So again, coming on to this idea of transformation. So we have a history as an industry to have a lot of startups and have a lot of ins and outs instead of having stable and consistent operators. Would you think that that's one of the pivot points that starts to happen, is that we have more stable and sustainable employers, and that therefore allows us to attract better potentially? And is there
absolutely
something there?
Yeah, of course, man. And it's usually never just one thing, but if I had to point out one thing, I would say that's definitely a big one for sure. Being able to just, as a whole, as an industry, being able to raise the bar, right? Maybe 10 years ago, I would have said, home service companies or skilled trade companies in general are slow to adopt technology and having a web presence. When I started my career in this industry, I was telling people in 2017, 2018, and trying to explain why they needed a website. And here we are. Maybe today I'm trying to explain why they need to understand the impacts that AI can have for their business, right? And so I think, being able to level in terms of how we go about running the business, really taking it from I'm an owner of a business, an LLC, but I work for the company, and transitioning that to I own an actual business and I can take a 2-week vacation and not feel like, the business is not sustainable without me. Because if it's not, then I think fundamentally it's not a business in my view. And I see a lot of evidence of, what you're referencing. As I begin to think about it, that's a really big one. I think it's kind of innumerable to measure the impact of what that actually is.
It's the old cream of the crop, right? Floats to the
Yeah.
top. So I want to ask, I can't let you go because you and I are operating under a similar business model in this space. You
Sure.
outsource a department, HR department, recruiting. I'm sure there's other pieces of it. We also do the outsourcing for customer experience, inside sales, and accounting. And I always think of these as center of competencies. And my conversation with my clients or my potential clients is if you don't know how to hire, train, and manage that department, then you shouldn't have that department internal. What are your thoughts?
100%. Absolutely. I think there's several reasons that a business would outsource: economy to scale, the inability to staff appropriately, the lack of experience or skill set to be able to manage them and lead them. Many different reasons, but I would completely agree with what you're saying in regards to needing, like, how you go about making the decision to insource versus outsource or have that. And actually, I think two things are pivotal no matter what. And it's, you have to be a good leader. And then if you can't hire really great people, it doesn't matter what department it is, probably. But I think there's going to be some more difficult ones, right? I'm typically more focused on the tech side of the business, but there's definitely the
Sure.
CPAs, and there's definitely the bookkeepers and the dispatchers and the service coordinators. Those are very popular jobs as well. And I actually have a client that I have pounded the table for the last 8 months. He's went through 4 or 5 different like comptroller, senior bookkeeper roles. And I tell him, I said, Stephen, why are you dead set on having this as an internal position? Myself, like, I have a CFO, but from a fractional standpoint, very high quality employee, not employee, but contractor that works, does an amazing job, teaches me all kinds of things in relation to finance. I get all the same benefits for sure. So, and it gives me a lot more flexibility and kind of widens the market, like who I can actually hire and who I can't.
Yes.
And you don't need a lot of these people inside of the actual business most often. And that's also like an assumption that business owners have. Like, oh, well, you can't work here because you're not going to be in the office. I'm like, why do you got to be in the office?
Exactly. We hear a lot of that too. And because we are in the accounting and the controller space, we're real close to the inefficiencies and the poor effects of trying to hire somebody internally, regardless if you do it one time or many times. And I always explain, like, for example, what we do, it's a skill set. You have a license, we have a license. And so it's the same thing. So we spent years of experience and we spent education and such to gain the knowledge and the certification that we need to do to perform the role that we do for you. There's a lot that goes into that. And it's the same thing. It's one of those things too. And I see this often. You made comment earlier that you come across this whole HR and recruiting space. It's just lack of, you don't even have it. You play at it instead of really executing it. We feel very much the same thing, is that you have data input resources. Somebody's showed them how to input data, but there's no real skill in how to organize and assign that data in such a way that you can now understand your business performance. That's a skill.
Right.
That's an experience. Or
So true.
and so I believe that's also one of the transformational topics for the future is, do you insource or do you outsource? And we have come from an industry of everything has to be insourced, it's micromanaged or assumed that it is managed, and then you find out it's not managed. But I feel very, very strongly that that is going to be one of the decisions that starts to evolve in this space, is that, do I insource it or do I outsource it? So it's enlightening to me to meet another colleague that has a same business model and is addressing this in a similar way. So thanks for joining the troops here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, maybe I didn't realize how much overlap there was between the two businesses. And, as I kind of, took a second to think through everything in terms of the overlap, I do think it's actually rather amusing. I think the difference probably is in relation, or something you said maybe on the finance, or like you focus on the core business functions and systems.
Yeah, yes.
The priority departments within in the business, right?
The operational systems and the accounting system. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Just things that you can't run the business without. Nonetheless, well, I think the biggest problem that we actually solve is because we are outsourced, actually. And the situation that a lot of home service companies get themselves into, and they don't realize it, is they're not thinking about recruiting until they need to hire somebody.
Exactly.
Until it's already too late. So what ends up happening is, all right, somebody quits, it's summertime, gets hot, all of a sudden we got too many calls and we're short staffed. And then you got to start hiring, right? And so now you're in a reactive position, costs a lot of money. You end up hiring desperate, the wrong person, or maybe you get lucky, whatever the case may be. And then after you fill that role, you just stop, right? You may hire 2 or 3 people the entire year, so it's not a full functioning part of your business, but that's the actual paradigm shift, right?
Yes.
Maybe you can't justify having a $70,000 recruiter all year round, but recruiting, you should always be recruiting regardless if you're actually actively hiring or not. And so that's really, I think that the problem that we solve is going to be allowing you to be in a more proactive position, always do these core functions that you need to be successful when you are ready to hire, but at in a position where it's actually affordable and it makes sense. I think the most fundamental question, Lynn, when I think about insourcing versus outsourcing, even for my business, is how much is it, like, what is the cost to me and the business to get this department to scale?
Yes.
Like, can I do this at scale? Finance is not something I can do at scale or effectively. So that's definitely an aspect that I do it.
Well, and like accounting and bookkeeping, that is a whole set of tools and systems that is a skill set in itself. The difference that what we bring to it is that we bring that, plus we bring in the operations. So we know the operations side as well. So we become the bridge between accounting / bookkeeping and now operations. We are able to advise the system you need to depend on for that is operations, not book or the accounting system. Vice versa, it's not the accounting system, it's the operations system, right? So we understand the difference in what should go where. What doesn't happen when you insource something like that, at least my experience, is that I find in the world of accounting and controllers is that the accounting and controller, even if you hire them, still doesn't know your operation system. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So it becomes siloed. It's siloed versus being a competency that is in your business. So this is the whole thing that I'm talking about, center of competencies. You've got to find the right partners for the center of competencies that you need to execute the sustainable strategies of your business, whether it's HR, whether it's accounting, whether it's customer experience. All of those things begin to add up, and it is about scalability. It is about scalability at the end of the day. One, it might be that, I have a great accounting department and a controller, and it allows me to scale, or I need to scale it with the way I scale. I would argue it's the first. So if you have the right center of competency, if you got the right center of competency, now you can go focus on and scale on what makes you money, right?
Exactly.
So But that's why I view it very much as one of those transformational items that are going to become more and more visible, I think, to us as we mature in the next 5 years, especially with technology and business systems and all the things that are going in front of us. But HR and recruiting is a big one. And more importantly, most of my clients, they don't have that. It's void. So it's a great play. Well, listen, Warren, thanks for your time today. Why don't you tell everybody about how they can get a hold of you, learn more about you, and then we'd love to have you come back. I'd love to have an update from you.
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to our website. www.yellowstonelocal.com. We're on LinkedIn, every social media site. Number will be there. You can schedule time. We'd be happy to talk with you. No obligation. And, I think outside of just your listeners, probably I have a few clients that, many clients that really need to talk to you as well, Lynn.
Awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed it. Thanks.
You as well. You have a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to Transforming the Trades. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained some valuable insights and tips for your trade business. If you found this podcast helpful, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to check out our website where you can find additional resources and information to help you grow your business. Until next time, keep innovating and take charge of your success.